Okay, so there's a couple things I want to talk about in this video. I just did a video about Arizona passing the first couple of hurdles about sound money, putting it into legislation, sound money, gold and silver being used as money. And I remember a while back, Utah had some kind of thing going for them too. I don't remember if it was something they were wanting to put on the books, but it didn't get passed or whatever. It was a few years back. But it looks like they're back in the spotlight again. Is Utah about to dump the Fed, put trust back in gold, God and gold rather than central bank? That's what I'm going to focus on. This is the articles from Zero Hedge. But before I get to that, I got to get back into the WebBot. And someone sent me a link, okay? Sputnik News. And he says, like, again, page 25, February WebBot report. The same one I just told you about the other day where I said, I think this might be a WebBot hit about good news for Bitcoin and silver and all that stuff. And he says, again, positive announcement. And that was what was in the... Matter of fact, let me... give me a second. Let me pause this. I'm going to reread that piece of the WebBot report because I still have it in my email because it is very relevant. Okay. Last two paragraphs. As model space is moved forward into February, we continue to have growing new supporting sets within currencies crisis, as well as Bitcoin, gold, silver as a positive response. Number one, finally, gold is above $1,200 and looks like it's staying there. Silver has just hit $18, and we haven't seen that in a long time. Bitcoin, of course, was up, got hit again, but again, it barely went back down, honestly. These sets are now showing growth, arriving in spurts on the 3rd, 5th, and again on the 10th of the month. The new aspect in attribute sets that accrue for February 3rd are for silver and specifically include sets for silver traders and silver exchanges, as well as silver suppression and silver supporting and silver demand. All of these sets in total are slightly more than half of the gain for the day in this tranche of new emotional values. These sets bring in details for sweaty palms, feigning grown men, and heart attacks, aid cares, emergency rooms, and vomiting, and other sets that will not be due to the influenza outbreak. The growth spurt on the 5th of February is dominated by Bitcoin, but also has significant support for silver. These new sets bring in temporal markers for positive announcement about Bitcoin from some officialdom. Okay? Along with the positive announcement, there are some sets for an example of justice. So let's focus on that. A positive announcement from officialdom. How about, and this was just posted the 9th of February, well after the WebBot report came out, okay? And this is a spot-on hit, okay? Sputnik News. Bitcoin becomes legal tender in Japan with strict regulation. Embracing cryptocurrency, Japan has a new law that will make Bitcoins usable as legal tender. Companies hoping to deal in the new currency, however, must submit to a long list of regulations to ensure that the coins are not being used for criminal activity, yada, yada, yada. Is that not a hit? Is that not a spectacular WebBot hit? I mean, come on. So, on with the good news for silver and gold, also in that same report, as I just read, is Utah about to dump the Fed, put trust back in God and gold rather than the central bank. Utah may soon lead the way of putting trust back in God and his money, gold, rather than the God in the Federal Reserve, rather than in God in the Federal Reserve. States fed up with the phony, manipulated central bank currencies are starting to move away from the failing system and prepare to hedge themselves against the worst-case scenarios of monetary collapse. Though the Federal Reserve clearly dominates the U.S. and global economy, some U.S. states are making moves to reestablish real money and shift away from the burdensome and oppressive central bank currency. With the financial system so broadly manipulated by central bank printing and the experiment over the past 8 years of zero interest, unlimited, many lenders are looking for a safe haven and a guard against the downturn of weak spots of debt-based money printing as the default means of exchange. Put more simply, Utah may lead or soon lead the way to putting trust back in God and gold rather than God in the Federal Reserve. A new law proposed in the House, again in the Utah's House, would allow for a repository of physical gold to encourage and facilitate official business of the state being conducted with funds backed by or drawn from the value of this stored wealth. A subtle move that is nonetheless revolutionary in scope. According to the 10th Amendment Center, a bill introduced in the Utah legislature would build on the state's Legal Tender Act, creating a foundation for further action to encourage the use of gold and silver as money, and take another step toward breaking the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money. Representative Ken Ivory introduced House Bill 224, or HB 224, on January 27th. The legislation would add several provisions to state law designed to encourage the use of gold and silver as legal tender. Passage would set the stage for expansion of gold repositories in the state and authorize further study on several sound money policies. Specifically, HB 224 would authorize the investment of public funds in specie legal tender held in a commercial specie repository. Under existing code, specie legal tender means gold or silver coin and bullion. Commercial specie repository means an institution that holds or receives deposits of specie legal tender that is located within the state. Practically speaking, passage would give the state the option to hold funds in gold and silver instead of Federal Reserve notes. According to the definition set in place by the founders of this nation, only gold and silver represent real currency. Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution makes clear that only gold and silver are to be used as payment, but it is hardly what takes place in the modern economy. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque, and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligations of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. And while Texas made a big move in 2015 to set up a gold bullion depository in the state, Utah, historically a very independent and conservative state, is also now attempting to get back on solid footing. As Money Metals Exchange explains, Texas' move to repatriate gold is a big deal, centered around distrust of Wall Street financial markets and a keen eye on schemes surrounding the physical possession of gold. When Governor Greg Abbott signed House Bill number 483 in his own hand on Friday, Texas gave a big gold finger to Wall Street and will soon bring $1 billion in gold bars back to the Lone Star State. In fact, those with the fiduciary responsibility for managing the Texas gold are feeling less certain than ever. Many European nations, like Germany, have been repatriating their gold bullion holdings, billions of which have been until recently retained by the New York Fed and other central bank vehicles, while Russia and China, among other world powers, have been accumulating massive amounts of gold at a rate never before seen in history. Much of it is being soaked up in stealth and brought back channels on the market to downplay the size of the purchases. But close observers are acutely aware of the fact that many states are attempting to build up enough personal collateral to guarantee their relative place if and when the dollar reserve standard is officially dissolved and a new global exchange takes over. Of course, individual states in the United States can also make similar moves and thereby stave off the effects of bankruptcy and potential currency collapse in the foreseeable future. Would states see a return to prosperity and independence if they used sound money and avoided the debt trap and control instrument of the Fed? The answer should be obvious, but many would be surprised at how it plays out if it were allowed to happen. If states and foreign nations are putting this much stock in gold, given their knowledge of economic events yet to unfold, should you be placing your trust in gold, silver, or other precious metals as well? Keep your eyes on Utah, and if it takes hold there, other states may want more freedom. You know my answer. You know JSNIP4's answer. You should have been stacking precious metals. And I'll say it again, especially silver. You now have Arizona, Utah, again, Texas. I covered that when they were making that bullion vault for them. The teacher state something or another pension fund. They wanted to invest in the gold that's going to be stored there. And I kept saying, each time I read something like this, I'm like, guys, if I'm wrong, if loving the low's wrong, I don't want to be right. No. If loving silver and gold's wrong, JSNIP4 does not want to be right. Because, as I've always said, you're a fly on the wall, and you look not at what individual people are even doing. Forget that. How about countries? And I keep looking at China and their massive appetite for precious metals. Also Russia. Other countries too, but you just don't hear about them that much because they're not nearly as big or buying as much as those guys, especially China. But we have states in the United States, Arizona, Utah, Texas. Our president is a gold man. Our president, the current president, is a big proponent of gold. I would sit here seeing all this, adding all this up, being able to place a wager, if you will. The odds of precious metals not doing phenomenal in the future, and I don't know how soon, I can't say that. But the odds of them not doing phenomenal are terrible. The odds of them doing phenomenally well in the future is awesome. Which is why I told you the day will come where we all sit back and say, and I said, you're not going to pray to God. You're going to pray to J.P. Morgan. You're going to pray to Jamie Dimon. Like you pray over your meal, let's thank God for our food today. You're going to thank God. You're going to pray to the J.P. Morgan goddess or God. The goddess would be Blythe Masters, who doesn't work there anymore. But goddess Blythe Masters, God, J.P. Morgan, if you will. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan. And you're going to pray something like this. Dear non-heavenly, not my father, rotten J.P. Morgan Chase and its CEO, Jamie Dimon. While I understand sometimes the things you've done, it really pissed us all off. We got tired of waiting. But hindsight, being 2020, you've allowed us all to stack precious metals for a number of years, so many more years than we all thought. You've enabled me to get a lot. And you've enabled me to make a small fortune in doing so now that we're seeing the whole plan unfold in front of us. So like I said, it's only going to happen. You're going to see these prices happen to go up. When they go up massively, it's because the club has allowed it. Not any time before that. No, the COMEX is not going to default. Like I said, they will not default. It's just a paper obligation on nonsense anyways. How do you default on that? You can only pull so much gold or silver out of there anyways. There won't be enough people able to demand delivery. It's not going to happen. The only people demanding delivery are the 0 point something whatever percent of people who play that game. 99% is the paper being transferred back and forth by the club. They're not worried about a default. But they would just shut it down. Like I said, they'd have a terrorist attack would happen. The exchange went down. They will not be defaulting. You're not going to call it a default. They put that rule together again for the millionth time recently. November 2014, the CME Group, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, who controls that damn COMEX. It's part of the club. Club members work there, okay? They put circuit breakers in for gold and silver. for all my new subscribers who may not have heard me this, because I get new subscribers every day. They put circuit breaker rules in place, which they had never, ever done before with gold and silver. Why would they do that? Don't they like crushing people on the way down? Nope. It's not for the way down. The circuit breakers are there for the way up. So when they explode in price, precious metals, they'll stop trading activity for like 15 minutes or whatever it is, a few minutes, and then they'll resume. And then it'll happen again. They'll stop trading again, and it'll resume. I'm telling you now, for the umpteenth time, Webbot has been calling $300, $500, $600 silver, all those numbers, going up to 600 and quite possibly higher for a long time. And we sat back saying, no, never happening. When you start to see $5 a day moves, that'll be the first sign the Webbot said to look for. And then it's going to be $20 per day moves in silver. Okay? When you see the fives getting close, when you see a $2 or $3 move in a day, you better hope you've got your silver by that time. Okay? I'm just going to say that. But this is definitely a Webbot hit. We now have another state really poking the Fed, if you will, in the eye. And it's with the same stick made of gold and silver, if you will. I think we've got something going on here. And we will, I'm a firm believer, we will be proven right. Those of us stackers who've been fighting this fight all these years against the naysayers and the nonsense, we know what real money is. We know what thousands of years of history is. It's not history just because someone wrote it in a book. It's real. Paper money has been tried over and over again throughout history on this planet. Backed by nothing, it fails every time. And at the end of the failure, it goes back to the starting point, and the starting point is precious metals. It has done that every time. So, should we think this time? Well, this time, maybe we'll just start over again. We'll do the whole thing over again. More paper money backed by nothing. Yeah, that'll work. Not happening. Take care.